Red moves faster. Before the first engine screamed and before the first human died, I already knew the day would belong to me. That is what happens when a warband wakes up hungry for battle, and the only orc who can force dead metal to obey is still asleep under a pile of stolen armor plates. When the camp needs a miracle of iron, fire, and bad decisions, it always comes crawling back to my workshop. My name is Dregnuk Ironfang, and I am a mech. Not some greasy youth with a loose bolt in his skull and a wrench he can barely lift. Not one of those loud little fools who thinks banging on a gun with a hammer counts as engineering. I am a real mech, a master of metal, noise, heat, sparks, and glorious destruction. I understand the language of machines better than most boys understand their own battle cries. For 43 years I have forged, welded, hammered, cut, bolted, painted, rebuilt, and invented for the warband of Big Boss Morgesh Blackjaw. In that time I have made more instruments of death than most clans have teeth in all their jaws put together. My day never starts at dawn. Dawn is a Hume idea. For an orc, time begins when the brain decides the body has rested enough, and not a second sooner. Most mornings that moment arrives when some miserable Gretchen starts kicking my head because something expensive, noisy, or explosive has stopped working. This morning, the unlucky little runt is Snivjit. He is a thin green scrap with one twitching eye and a voice like a rusty bolt dragged across a steel plate. He keeps a safe distance from my bed, which is really just a mound of scrap covered with something that used to be an Imperial Guard banner before it became bedding, and then a rag, and then almost part of the floor. Boss Dregnuk, he squeals. Big Boss Morgesh says his battle wagon is broken again. He says if you do not fix it by midday, he will make you eat your own wrenches. I open one eye, the left one. The right one is a bionic implant I fitted into my own skull after a plasma reactor experiment went wrong 3 years ago. The light in the workshop is dim, coming through cracks in walls built from broken tank hulls, shuttle plating, bent rebar, and whatever else looks sturdy enough to nail together. The air is thick with grease, hot metal, ozone, fungus smoke, and that deep, honest orc smell that weak hummies call unbearable and sensible orcs call a proper workshop scent. Again I growl, hauling my bulk upright. My muscles, trained by years of lifting engines and forcing stubborn plates into alignment, flex under green skin scarred by welding sparks, acid burns, flying shrapnel, and the sort of accidents that make lesser mechs die early. That is the 3rd time this week. What has he done to it now? Tried to ram a mountain? Snivjit shrugs. His bony shoulders hop up and down with comic helplessness. I do not know, boss. He says the wagon only wants to turn left. He says fixing it is your job and asking questions is not. Typical. Morgesh Blackjaw is a magnificent war boss. He can tear a space marine in half with his bare hand, and with the other hand he can point at a problem until someone else fixes it. But he understands machinery about as well as a squig understands philosophy. To him, a machine is simple. If it works, he likes it. If it does not work, then the mech has failed him. That is the way of things. I swing my feet off the bed and my boots hit the floor with a clang loud enough to wake half the workshop. The boots are welded from armored plates cut off a wrecked lemon Russ, heavy enough to crack weak flooring and proud enough to make a good entrance. The floor itself is a rough chaos of sheet metal, bolts, nuts, half-built projects, empty shell casings, broken blades, and the remains of at least one forgotten meal. Somewhere under all that lies a handful of valuable parts I borrowed from another mech, after he made the mistake of insulting my craftsmanship in front of the whole camp. My workshop is my kingdom, my fortress, my shrine. It fills an entire hangar at the center of our camp, which we built from the ruins of an imperial city we took 6 months ago. Every wall is covered in tools of all shapes and sizes. Most of them I made myself, or improved from Hume, Eldar, or Tau equipment. Shelves sag under boxes of bolts, coils of wire, charges of explosives, drums of paint, belts of ammunition, and odd bits of metal that might become useful at any moment. In one corner stands my pride, a forge built from the heart of a Chimera engine and improved with burners cut from a captured transport ship. Beside it hangs a rack of power claws, each one capable of crushing a marine helmet like a nutshell. Farther down are rows of weapons in every stage of completion: shooters, choppers, bigger shooters, the biggest shooters, and a few experimental plasma things that have an annoying habit of exploding when I am not quite finished with them. I grab my favorite wrench, a brutal chunk of iron the size of a small Gretchen, marked with a fresh notch for every successful project, and stomp toward the exit. Snivjit hurries after me, his legs moving so fast they look frightened of their own shadow. The camp of Morgesh Blackjoe is waking. To an outsider it would look like complete anarchy. To an orc it is efficiency in its truest form. Boys and knobs spar in crude fighting pits. Choppas swing. Shooters bark. Someone laughs. Someone screams. Somewhere a squig gets loose and 3 Gretchen pay for it. The air is full of metal on metal, crude engines coughing to life, insults, gunfire, and the deep rising growl of warriors getting ready for another good day. The big boss battlewagon sits at the edge of the central square, and even from a distance I can see the problem. The machine leans hard to the left. The left side has sunk deeper into the churned dirt than the right. The hull is covered in dents, bullet scars, burn marks, and what looks suspiciously like tyrannid claw tracks. Morgesh stands beside it with his massive arms crossed over his chest, wearing the expression that promises violence if I fail to solve things quickly. He is impressive even by orc standards. 3.5 meters of scarred muscle, iron plates, trophies, and bad intentions. One arm ends in a power claw I built for him myself, a magnificent tool capable of opening tank armor like a ration tin. The lower half of his jaw is reinforced with metal slabs and tusk braces, which is why he earned the name Blackjoe in the first place. His eyes burn with that familiar bright madness all proper warbosses carry inside them. "Dregnuk," he roars, "finally, my wagon is busted. Fix it, or I use you as a thrown weapon." I approach the battle wagon and give it the slow, respectful look a master gives a machine that almost deserves him. It began life as something imperial, maybe a transport, maybe the unhappy corpse of a lemon Russ, but after it came into my hands it became what it was always meant to be. I layered on extra armor from all kinds of sources. I stitched together a stronger engine from 3 different machines. I mounted a great cannon at the front, 2 heavy shooters on the flanks, racks for spare ammunition, skulls from defeated enemies, jagged spikes for style, and war banners for proper intimidation. The problem reveals itself at once. The right track is nearly gone, hanging by a pathetic 1 or 2 bolts and a prayer. Several road wheels on that side are bent. One is missing entirely. "Boss," I say, scratching my chin with the head of my wrench, "your right track is almost torn off. 1 wheel is gone, the others are bent, and half the suspension looks like it got into an argument with a cliff. What did you hit?" Morgesh squints, trying to remember. "Yesterday we chased some Eldar through a canyon, slippery little rats. There were rocks, big rocks. Maybe I hit a few, maybe 10. Hard to say. It was a good time." Of course it was. Everything that includes speed, impact, and screaming is a good time for Morgesh. I let out a sigh like steam, escaping an overheated boiler. "Fine, 2 hours, maybe 3. I need a new track, replacement wheels, and something strong enough to make this side stop falling apart." "Snivjit," I bark. The Gretchen jumps. "Run to the workshop. Tell the others to drag out spare tracks from truck number 7 and every wheel they can find. If it rolls, spins, or looks heavy enough to matter, bring it here." He bolts away with the speed only a terrified Gretchen can achieve. I turn back to Morgesh. "And you need to stop using the wagon as a ram every time you see something solid. It has a cannon. That is what the cannon is for." Morgesh snorts. "Cannons are for cowards who do not want to get close. Real orcs fight up close. Besides, ramming is fun. You hear that crunch when things give way. Beautiful. I roll my one real eye and start working. First, we have to lift the beast high enough to reach the damaged side. I call over a group of boys, and together, we position a pair of crude jacks that I built from hydraulic pistons stolen from a wrecked Imperial lifter. We pump, strain, swear, and hammer wedges into place until the right side of the battle wagon rises with a groan like an angry beast. Working on Ork machines is an art outsiders never understand. Hummies think engineering needs blueprints, standard parts, measurements, precision. That is why Hummy engineering is so timid. They are terrified of improvisation. They fear genius. We do not have that weakness. Every Ork machine is unique. Each one is built from whatever was lying nearby when inspiration struck. And more important than that, our machines work because we know they should. That is the part outsiders never grasp. They call it superstition. They are wrong. It is reality, only better. Our kind generates a great shared force, the waaagh field, the pressure of millions of brutal minds all pushing in the same direction. When enough of us know something is true, reality gets tired of arguing and obeys. Red makes a vehicle faster because every Ork knows red is faster. Blue brings luck. Yellow makes things explode bigger. Black makes things tougher. Green looks right because we are green, and that means it belongs. That is why mechs matter. We do not just bolt metal together. We shape belief. Every swing of the hammer, every twist of the wrench, every hiss of the welder is part craft and part ritual. We teach the machine what it is supposed to be, and then the world gives up and lets it happen. When I build a weapon, I do not merely connect parts. I force a piece of the waaagh into iron and fire. I make certainty out of scrap. The ruined track finally falls free. I study the damage. Some links can be saved. Others are done for. Soon enough, a gang of Gretchen arrives dragging parts from every corner of camp. One spare track clearly came off a chimera. Another once belonged to a wrecked battle wagon. The third, if I am honest, could have come from anything at all, but it looks thick, ugly, and determined, which is enough for me. Good, I say. Now hold it steady. You hand me the welder, you stop shaking, and somebody bring red paint. If we do not repaint the new bits, the wagon will lose speed. The next 3 hours become a storm of movement. I cut, weld, curse, hammer, weld again, then hammer harder. Ork engineering does not require perfection. It requires stubbornness, conviction, and the willingness to keep hitting something until it agrees with you. I replace the worst links with a mix of salvaged sections. I force new bolts through holes that do not quite match, and then solve the rest with fresh weld lines. I swap out the ruined road wheels for ones that are new only in the sense that they have not completely rusted through yet. I add extra armor plates where I know Morgesh will strike the next wall, boulder, or tank. Then I step back and apply the most important improvement of all. Paint. I personally cover the repaired track guards and fresh plates in bright red, using paint stolen from an Imperial depot. Every stroke says the same thing. Fast, faster, faster than before, because red moves faster. Everybody knows it. That makes it true. When I finish, I wipe sweat, oil, and a little blood from my forehead. Do not ask whose blood. The battle wagon looks almost new, or at least as new as a proper Ork vehicle ever should. Patched, scarred, ugly, confident, ready. Done, boss, I say, try it. Morgesh clambers into the driver's seat with eager violence. His weight makes the whole hull shudder. He slams a lever. The engine roars awake, low and savage, like a wounded predator too furious to die. The tracks begin to turn. The wagon rolls forward straight and true, no lurch, no lean, no shame. It works, Morgesh bellows, and you were right about the red. I can feel it. It is faster now. I grin. Of course it is faster now. Red moves faster. That is one of the basic laws of existence. He tears around the square, crushing a few innocent barrels and terrifying a group of Gretchen half to death before skidding back in a cloud of dust and smoke. Then he jumps down and slams a hand into my back hard enough to nearly plant me face first in the dirt. "Good work, Mek, you earned this." He tosses me a sack full of teeth, proper orc currency, warm from some previous owner. I weigh it in one hand. Respectable. Enough to buy interesting components from passing traders, or bribe another mech into revealing a secret, or fund something truly unreasonable. I return to my workshop with the teeth and without any intention of resting. Rest is for creatures without imagination. In the far corner waits a pile of other projects. A big shooter promised to one of the knobs. A set of crude power claws for boys eager to improve their fighting. A fresh armor reinforcement for a truck. And under a stained tarp, my favorite little piece of madness. A teleport device. Yes, I know how that sounds. Most mechs do not touch warp matters unless they are desperate or already half dead. Warp tech is unstable, dangerous, and frequently offended by logic. But I am not most mechs. I once watched Eldar leap through impossible distances as if space were only a suggestion, and ever since then I have been certain I can build something similar. Maybe it will send objects somewhere slightly wrong. Maybe it will explode. Maybe it will send a grot into a wall. But when it works, and it will work eventually, I will become the most talked about mech in the entire warband. I pull back the tarp. Underneath lies a table scattered with wire coils, luminous crystals ripped from Eldar machinery, a few suspiciously smooth metal plates, and one humming component I am reasonably sure came from part of a warp engine aboard a ship. I do not know exactly what it is, but it glows in the dark and vibrates when I speak to it, which feels promising. That is one of the truths of orc science. We do not always know why something works, we just know when it ought to. I do not follow some neat diagram. I follow instinct. Feel. The pull in the skull that says yes, that plate belongs there, that coil should wrap around that node, that crystal wants to sit in that socket. And if I believe hard enough, and if enough other orcs trust that I know what I am doing, then it becomes real. Because it has to. We are not just green-skinned savages, no matter what the other races say. We are the result of ancient bioengineering, the product of the long-dead old ones, or brain boys as our kind remembers them. They made us for war. They made us to multiply fast, survive anything, and carry what we needed inside our own blood and bones. Every orc is born already knowing something. Some know fighting. Some know patching wounds, though pain boys are best avoided if you value your current number of limbs. Mechs like me are born with the itch in the head that means machines. Nobody taught me how to build. I simply know. When I look at a pile of junk, I do not see waste. I see possibilities fighting to be assembled. I have barely connected 2 cable bundles when Snivjit bursts back in. Boss Dregnuk, big fight, huge fight. 2 knobs are smashing each other over who gets the next big shooter you promised. One says you promised him first, the other says no, you did not. I close my eyes for a moment. There are parts of being a mech that nobody appreciates. One of them is customer management. In orc society, disputes are usually solved by violence, which works fine until the angry customers are standing outside your workshop, and the thing they want is still inside it. I grab the big shooter in question and stride toward the noise. As expected, 2 massive knobs are squaring off in the center of camp, while a ring of delighted boys cheers them on. One is Drogskull, famous for his lack of patience, and his talent for roaring louder than most engines. The other is Varmak Steelfist, who firmly believes that ownership belongs to whoever has the larger fist, and his fists are indeed impressive. I ordered that shoot a first, Drogskull roars, shaking a worn old gun that looks one sneeze away from splitting in half. I had more teeth. More teeth means more rights. I am bigger, Varmak answers, which is difficult to dispute because he towers above Drogskull by almost half a meter. Bigger means stronger. Stronger means I get the better gun. The crowd howls approval, eager for blood. I raise the big shooter over my head. Listen up, both of you ordered one. Both of you will get one. Drogskull asked first, so Drogskull gets the first one. Waaagh Mek gets the next one, and that one will be even better because I will learn from any mistakes in this one. That is logic even orcs respect. They both frown, chewing on the idea. Finally Waaagh Mek grunts. Fine, mine better be bigger and louder. It will be, I say. That is enough for him. I hand the weapon to Drogskull. He clutches it with the joy of a child receiving a beloved toy. The gun is a beautiful, overgrown mass of bundled barrels and a feed system I built from the remains of an Imperial heavy bolter. It roars when fired, shakes the hands that hold it, and overheats after too much enthusiasm, which only gives it character. Drogskull fires the whole first belt into the air at once. Shell casings rain down. Boys duck. The crowd erupts in cheers. Crisis avoided. I return to my workshop satisfied. The rest of the day passes in relative peace. I sharpen a choppa blade blunted in a particularly dedicated fight. I reinforce a boy's shoulder armor with extra plates. I test a new kind of rocket launcher that, according to my calculations, should fly farther and straighter than standard Ork rockets. The first trial sends the rocket into entirely the wrong direction where it explodes in a distant scrap heap. That only proves the design needs more work. Perhaps more yellow paint, maybe a little more red too. As evening settles over the camp, as much as one can tell on a planet buried under dust clouds and smoke, the warband shifts into its favorite rhythm: food, drink, fighting, bragging. A huge fire is lit in the square. Orcs of every size gather around it. I step out of the workshop wiping my hands on a rag that gave up on being clean a long time ago. The air smells of roasted meat. Our livestock, squigs, strange creatures that look like toothy bouncing jaws with legs, have been butchered and are turning over spits. Ugly beasts, excellent flavor. I take my portion, a slab of meat still sizzling and dripping fat, and settle on a broken section of tank hull near the fire. Around me boys drink fungus beer, which is less beer and more thick alcoholic sludge with ambition. Stories begin to flow. Remember the Imperial fort on Galdris. One old fighter starts, his voice rough from scars across his throat. Those stupid hummies thought their walls would save them. We just rammed right through them. Another orc finishes for him, and the circle explodes with laughter. That is how orc storytelling works. Every tale gets bigger in the telling. One boy swears he killed a space marine with his bare hands. Another insists he saw Morgash split a tank in half. Truth is optional. Glory is what matters. Then one of the knobs turns to me. Oi Mek, tell us about your machines. What is the best thing you ever built? Every head turns. I feel the warm swell of pride. The best, I say, pretending to consider. Easy. A giant Gargant I built for my old boss 3 years ago. As tall as an Imperial Titan, armed to the teeth, strong enough to stomp whole enemy formations flat in one stride. The circle quiets with awe. We made it from the body of a captured warhound. I stripped the frame, added extra legs from a smashed defiler, reinforced the armor with baneblade plates, and mounted 2 immense guns on the shoulders. One fired plasma. The other, honestly, I never figured out exactly what it fired, but it was very loud and very effective. What happened to it, someone asks. I grin at the memory. It exploded during a fight with Tyranids. Maybe the reactor was not stable enough. Maybe it was too stable in the wrong direction. Hard to say. Anyway, the blast was spectacular. Took out the Gargant, 50 Tyranids, and unfortunately a squad of our own boys who were standing too close. But what an explosion. You could see it for kilometers. The crowd roars with delighted approval. For orcs, even a disaster can be worthy of pride if it is loud enough. The night deepens. Fights start as they always do. Not murderous ones, usually. Just enough to settle opinions and remind everyone where they stand. I watch 2 boys knock each other unconscious in an argument about whose choppa is sharper. The crowd calls it a draw and respects them both for lasting so long. When the fire burns low and the camp begins to drift toward sleep, I head back toward my workshop. Then the night splits open with an explosion from the far side of camp. The ground trembles, a tower of smoke rises. Cheering and alarm blend into one glorious sound. I run toward it. The first Gretchen I catch is gasping. It is Mek Gargant, boss. He tried to improve his power generator and it blew up, took half his workshop with it. I snort. Gargant is young, ambitious, and not yet wise enough to fear his own ideas. He is always reaching beyond his current skill, and the results are usually educational for everyone nearby. Part of me considers leaving him to his fate. Competition among mechs is never gentle. Every failure of his makes me look better. But if his workshop is gone, he will probably start stealing my tools. That would be inconvenient. So I go. The sight is impressive even by Ork standards. Half his workshop has been replaced by a smoking crater. Gargant sits nearby, blackened with soot, his clothes still smoldering, more offended than injured. "Stupid thing," he mutters. "It should have worked. I connected everything right." I crouch beside the wreckage. The problem is obvious. He tried to combine two incompatible energy systems without proper insulation. Worse, he forgot the simplest protection of all. "Where is the blue paint?" I ask. He blinks at me. "Inside components do not need paint." "Wrong," I say. Paint always matters. Red for speed, blue for luck, yellow for bigger blasts, black for strength, green because it looks right. You were working with unstable energy. Blue matters even more inside than outside. He looks annoyed and grateful at the same time, which is about as respectful as a young mech gets. I help him strip down the remains and explain what he should have done instead. There is competition among us, yes, but there is also understanding. The more good mechs a warband has, the better all the machines become, and that means more victories, more loot, more chances to build things worthy of song. By the time I return to my bed, deep night has settled over the camp. I sleep hard, dreaming of engines the size of cathedrals and guns so loud they shake stars. The next morning Morgesh Blackjoe crashes into my workshop before I am fully awake. "Dregnuk," he bellows, "I have a job for you, a big one." I sit up and rub my eye in my bionic lens. "What kind of big?" "We got a message from Warboss Razkreg Ironmaw. He is gathering a great waaagh against an imperial world in the next system. Hundreds of bosses, thousands of boys. He wants every warband to bring its best machines so everyone sees who has real strength." My heart's really, since orc bodies are built for efficiency, starts hammering with excitement. A great waaagh means opportunity, a chance to show skill before a vast crowd, a chance to prove I am not merely useful but legendary. "What do you want me to build, boss?" "Something impressive," he says, eyes burning with hunger. "Something that makes the other bosses jealous. Something that proves Morgesh Blackjoe leads the best warband in the whole region." I stand. Ideas are already crashing through my skull like artillery. "Give me 3 days," I say. "I will build you a battle fortress. The biggest, loudest, fastest, meanest war machine you have ever seen." Morgesh bears a grin full of tusks and iron. "That is what I like to hear. 3 days, take whatever you need, materials, helpers, teeth, anything." When he leaves, I remain in my workshop surrounded by junk, unfinished projects and destiny. A battle fortress. This will be my masterpiece. The crown of everything I have learned through decades of work. The base will be the hull of a captured Baneblade lying at the edge of camp for the past 2 months. Too wrecked to drive as it was, but still structurally sound. Onto that I will weld additional armor from every source I can find, tank plates, ship plating, factory steel, whatever is thick enough to take a hit and ugly enough to look proper. The main gun will be the Baneblade cannon rebuilt and overcharged, with red paint on the breech and barrel because fast shells kill before slower ones get the chance. The sides will carry banks of big shooters for infantry. The roof will take a rocket system built from the remains of an Imperial whirlwind. The front will get an enormous spiked ram because Morgash loves ramming things, and there is no point disappointing a war boss who pays in teeth. But more important than all that, it has to look terrifying. A proper machine should frighten the enemy before it fires. I will decorate it with skulls, banners, chains, spikes, and trophies. Every inch of the hull must scream that an orc built it, and that anyone standing in front of it has made a terrible mistake. The next 3 days become a fever dream of labor. I mobilize everything. Dozens of Gretchen drag materials. Gangs of boys lift the heavy parts. A few other mechs volunteer help, partly because the project fascinates them, and partly because if it succeeds they can say they watched genius at work. I sleep in short, violent bursts whenever my body forces me to. Then I wake and build again. Sparks fly without pause. Hammer blows set the rhythm. The air grows thick with hot iron, oil, smoke, sweat, and ambition. Any real mech would find it intoxicating. Problems rise constantly. The original Baneblade engine cannot carry the increased mass, so I weld in a second engine from a truck and mate them through a transmission that would make an Imperial engineer faint dead away. The tracks keep slipping until I add guide plates and reinforce the teeth with black paint for toughness. The rocket system is especially troublesome. On the first test, one rocket launches backward and nearly kills a cluster of squigs. I tear the whole assembly apart, reverse 3 components, add more yellow paint around the warheads, and try again. The second test sends the rocket forward in a perfect screaming line before it detonates exactly where it should. By the evening of the second day, the battle fortress begins to reveal itself. It is vast, angular, layered, bristling, absurd. It looks like it could chew through an army, and that is exactly the point. On the third day, I focus on the final truth of every great machine. Paint. I cover wide sections of the hull in red for speed. Blue stripes go around ammunition feeds and command plates for luck. Black panels harden the most vulnerable armor. Yellow markings cluster around explosives so they remember their duty. To an outsider, it might look wild and random. It is not. Every color has purpose. Every brushstroke is a kind of spell written in certainty. Then come the decorations. Enemy skulls bound to chains, trophies from old battles, the banners of Morgash warband. At the front I weld a giant metal jaw with teeth as long as my forearm. It opens and closes on hydraulic pistons, serving no tactical purpose at all and therefore making perfect sense. Intimidation matters. Style matters. Glory matters. By sunset, the machine is finished. It stands before my workshop in all its crude, monstrous splendor, 4 meters tall, 8 meters long, buried under guns and armor, hungry for movement. I step back and wipe my forehead. It is beautiful. Morgash comes for inspection. He circles the fortress with widening eyes, slaps the armor, yanks the chains, tests the turret, then climbs inside. I follow and point out the controls. These levers steer. This one fires the main cannon. These buttons trigger the big shooters. This red button launches the rockets. And this, I say, placing a hand on a huge lever painted in warning marks, is the emergency engine overload. Pull it only if you absolutely need a burst of impossible speed. It will make the whole machine run like madness for a short time. It might also blow the engines apart. Morgash nods and immediately starts playing with the controls. Both engines roar to life at once, sounding like a thunderstorm trapped in iron lungs. The tracks bite the ground. The fortress lurches forward, slow only for an instant, then steadier, faster, stronger. It circles the camp while boys scatter out of the way and every head turns to watch. Perfect, Morgash roars. Best machine I ever drove. The other bosses will choke on their own envy. He is right. 2 days later, the whole warband rolls out to meet Razkreg Ironmaw. Hundreds of boys, dozens of vehicles, trucks, battle wagons, looted tanks rebuilt to Ork standards, clouds of smoke and dust behind them. The battle fortress leads the column. Its silhouette can be seen from kilometers away. The gathering place is an enormous plain, and even after all I have seen, the sight steals my breath. Thousands upon thousands of orcs from warbands across the sector fill the horizon. Giant stampas stride like crude titans, their every step shaking the ground. Battle wagons covered in so much armor and decoration they look like moving fortresses and art pieces at the same time. Flyers scream overhead, trailing black smoke. Everywhere there is shouting, boasting, laughing, fighting, and the unmistakable electric feeling of a great waaagh about to rise. When our battle fortress rolls into view, heads turn, fingers point, mechs stare. I can see envy in their eyes, and it tastes sweet. Then Warboss Razkreg Ironmaw himself approaches, towering, heavy, almost as large as a small stampa, surrounded by knobs and mechs. "Well now," he says, voice like distant artillery, "that is a good machine, very good. Who built it?" Morgesh jabs a thumb at me. "That is dregnuk ironfang." I step forward and bow my head, just enough to show respect without looking weak. "Ironfang," Razkreg says, studying me, "I heard of you. They say you built a Gargant once that exploded so loud the echo lasted 3 days. I grin carefully. "That was me, boss." He bursts into booming laughter. I like a mech who is not afraid of big explosions. "After the waaagh, if we all live long enough, come see me. I have a project. I need someone mad enough to try it. It is an honor beyond measure. Working for a warboss of that scale means resources I can only dream about. Mountains of scrap, engines, weapons, whole worlds to strip apart." I nod. "Gladly, boss." The next several hours are spent on demonstrations. Mechs show off their creations. A stampa with 20 guns firing all at once in a scream of recoil and smoke. A battle wagon plated so heavily it barely moves but can shrug off punishment like a mountain. A flyer with an engine so unstable it leaves a trail of flame, yet goes too fast for the eye to follow. One mech tries to show a new plasma cannon. It explodes on the first shot and throws him 10 meters through the air. Nobody mocks him cruelly. Failures happen to every real mech. Surviving them and trying again is what matters. Then the friendly tournament begins. Friendly, for orcs, only means most contestants do not intend to kill each other before the first horn. Morgesh takes the battle fortress into the contests. First it crushes a truck. Then it smashes through a rival battle wagon whose armor is impressive but not impressive enough. The final bout is against a smaller stampa, and that one becomes a true spectacle. Guns roar, armor rings, rams clash. In the end, Morgesh uses the front ram to flip the stampa onto its side. It keeps firing from the ground, which is admirable, but the judges call the fight there. The plain erupts in cheers. My machine just beat a stampa. That night the warbands feast around bonfires so large they stain the sky. Squigs roast by the hundreds. Fungus beer sloshes in barrels. Razkreg Ironmaw climbs onto a pile of wrecked tank hulls and gives a speech that sounds more like a war cry. "Listen, boys," he roars, and thousands fall into eager silence. "We are not here to talk. We are here to unleash the biggest, loudest, bloodiest waaagh this sector has ever seen." The crowd answers with a roar so vast it seems to shake the stars. The hummies in that next system think walls and ships can save them. We are going to show them what real strength looks like. We will crush their armies. We will start a fight they will remember for centuries. Each sentence sends the crowd louder. Weapons crash against shields. Boots pound the earth. The air itself thickens. I can feel it on my skin, the waaagh field, the raw pressure of thousands of orc minds joining in one purpose. It makes my muscles tighten, my thoughts sharpen, my hands itch for more tools, bigger engines, greater guns. It is intoxicating. This is what we are for. This is the pure concentration of Ork will. In the days that follow, mechs work without pause. Every machine must be battle-ready. Damage from the tournament gets repaired. Armor is thickened. Ammunition stocks grow. Bosses from other warbands start coming to me for upgrades. One wants more DACA. Another wants better armor. A third wants something so loud the enemy soils itself before the first shot. I work until my arms burn and my eyes ache, taking payment in teeth until my collection becomes wonderfully heavy. More valuable than the teeth, though, is my growing reputation. Soon every orc in the gathering knows the name Dregnuk Ironfang. Then departure day arrives. Above us hangs a fleet of ships assembled from captured hulls, stolen transports, half-repaired wrecks, and pure improvisation. The loading process is chaos refined into tradition. Boys shove, drag, shout, and fight their way aboard. Machines are winched into holds by cranes that creak like they regret being born. By any standard except orc standards, the whole thing is appalling. Somehow it works. The battle fortress is loaded onto Morgesh private ship, an imperial transport we captured a year ago and improved until its original design now hides beneath layers of armor, gun mounts, spikes, and unrelated additions. I go with it, carrying a crate of my best tools. No mech should ever be separated from his tools. That is like removing a limb and asking him to be cheerful about it. Inside the ship is the usual organized bedlam. Boys jam the corridors, checking weapons, sharpening choppas, arguing over kills they have not made yet. The smell is oil, powder, fungus, sweat, and anticipation. Deep below, engines begin to howl. The voyage through space lasts several days. Orc ships are not famous for comfort or elegance. They are famous for arriving at places despite every sensible objection the universe can offer. Navigation is more instinct than mathematics. As for warp travel, it is best not to think too hard about how we do it. Luck, stubbornness, and the fact that even warp predators may find us too irritating to deal with probably cover most of the explanation. At last, we burst from the warp into the target system. Through a viewing slit I see the world below, a proper imperial hive planet. Colossal hive cities stab upward from its surface. Orbital defenses glitter. Void shields shimmer. Tiny points of battle platforms turn cold in the darkness. Prepare for drop. A voice booms over the ship speakers. Time to show the weak ones what it means to fight orcs. Landing is less a procedure and more a controlled disaster. Drop pods, crude iron boxes with primitive braking rockets, are hurled toward the world. Some burn up, some miss by kilometers, most smash down more or less where they should, hitting like meteors. I am packed into one beside the battle fortress and a crowd of boys. The descent is violent enough to crack teeth. The pod screams and shakes. The heat becomes unbearable. Then the retro rockets fire and we hit the ground with a force that would pulp any normal human. The ramp slams open. We have landed on the edge of one hive city in an industrial district of factories, storage yards, and smoke stacks. Imperial defenders are already moving. I can see lines of lemon rust tanks turning toward us, infantry forming firing lines, officers shouting themselves hoarse. Forward, boys, Morgesh roars, leaping into the battle fortress. The engines answer. The machine rolls from the pod and opens fire at once. The main cannon slams a shell straight into the advancing tank column. 2 lemon rust tanks rise into the air in flame and torn steel. The big shooters begin their rattling song, chewing through ranks of guardsmen. Around me hundreds of orcs spill across the ground screaming for blood. This is the waaagh in its purest form. Chaos, violence, momentum, joy. The battle goes on for hours. The Imperials fight hard. I will give them that. Their discipline is impressive. Their fire lines are steady. But against a full waaagh they are doomed. Waves of boys hurl themselves forward without caring about losses. Vehicles grind over barricades and defenders alike. Mechs like me run wherever something breaks, because a war machine that stops in battle is an insult. At one point, A lemon rust lands a direct hit on the side of the battle fortress. The shell punches through an armor section, and black smoke pours out. I climb onto the hull immediately, bullets and La's fire snapping around me. The problem is damage to the cooling system. If it fails, the engines will overheat and stall, or more likely detonate in a spectacular fashion that would be satisfying but poorly timed. I work at mad speed, welding a replacement line from spare tubing I carry on my back, sealing ruptures with plates ripped from nearby wreckage, forcing the damaged assembly to remember its duty. One La's beam burns my arm. I ignore it. The machine matters more. After 15 furious minutes, the engine steady and the fortress surges forward again, its guns still singing. I drop to the ground and sprint to the next disaster. A truck has flipped after a rocket strike. Its axle is broken, but the engine still coughs with life. With help from a gang of boys, I roll it back onto its wheels, weld a new support from battlefield scrap, and send it snarling back into the fight. That is what a mech does in war. We keep the tide moving. Without us, the charge loses force. With us, it becomes unstoppable. By the end of the day, the Imperial defense is broken. One position after another collapses. I see Razgreg Ironmaw leading the final assault on the main gate of the hive, smashing through the defenders like a living tank. The gates fall. Orcs flood the city. What follows is occupation in the orc sense. Looting, wrecking, celebrating, fighting over the best ruins, glorious. For me, though, the work only grows more interesting. A captured city is a treasure chest. I spend the next week prowling the wreckage, taking anything useful: tank components, power generators from abandoned stations, ammunition stores, machine parts from manufactorums. My Gretchen drag it all back to an improvised workshop I establish inside a captured factory hall. Then I find the real prize. Deep in the lower levels of the hive, beyond old tunnels and sealed blast doors, I uncover a hidden Adeptus Mechanicus vault. The entrance is thick, covered in seals and warnings I cannot read, which only makes me want it more. With explosives, power claws, and persistence, I crack it open. Inside waits a treasury of forbidden wonders: stasis cradles holding ancient devices, data banks stacked with forgotten knowledge, weapons and armor more refined than any Imperial field gear I have seen. But in the center of the chamber rests something greater. A partial Titan prototype. Unfinished, sleeping, immense, and full of possibility. The moment I see it, my mind ignites. With enough orc genius, enough salvage, enough belief, I can make this into something new. Not Imperial, not refined, not timid. Orc. It takes 3 months. 3 months of endless labor. I all but live in the workshop. Dozens of other mechs join me. Hundreds of Gretchen Hall parts, fuel, paint, ammunition, plates, wiring, and anything else I shout for. Slowly the prototype changes. Elegant Imperial systems are stripped out and replaced with rougher, stronger, more honest orc solutions. Layers of armor from 100 wrecks go on. Weapon mounts bloom everywhere. Cannons on the arms. Rocket arrays on the shoulders. Secondary guns along the chest. And for close fighting, because no truly perfect machine ignores close fighting, a giant chopper the size of a building. And paint, oceans of paint. Red for speed, black for strength, yellow for destructive enthusiasm, blue for luck, enough color to bully reality itself. When at last I stand back, the thing looks like a nightmare dreamed by a mad god and forged by mechs in a thunderstorm. It is magnificent. I name it the Mega Gargant. It rises 50 meters into the air. Its shadow swallows whole streets. When I activate it for the first time, when the engines deep in its body wake and the whole Titan frame begins to tremble with life, the ground shakes beneath us. Buildings crack. Dust pours from the ceilings of distant ruins. Then the Mega Gargant lifts one colossal foot and takes its first step. The city answers with an earthquake. Razgreg Ironmaw comes in person to see it. He stands below with his head tilted back, mouth open in rare, genuine astonishment. "Dregnuk ironfang," he says at last, his voice full of something close to respect. "You are not just a mech. You are a great mech, the greatest I have seen. This thing changes war." He is right. The Mega Gargant becomes the symbol of our conquest, a machine people will speak about for generations. And I, a mech who began his day repairing battlewagons and arguing with knobs about delivery order, now stand at the top of my craft. But even then, even with the biggest and most glorious machine in the sector towering above me, I know the truth. A mech is never finished. There is always another project, another improvement, another weapon that should be louder, faster, crueler, another engine that should not work but will, another impossible idea waiting for the right wrench, the right bolt, the right amount of belief. That evening I sit on the shoulder of the Mega Gargant and look out over the conquered hive. Below me stretches a sea of green skins celebrating among fires, wrecks, and banners. The wind carries the smell of hot metal, smoke, oil, blood, and victory. Somewhere down there boys are fighting over loot. Somewhere a generator is already failing. Somewhere a gun is jamming. Somewhere another young mech is dreaming too large and too soon. Good. That means the work continues. This is the life of a mech, endless making, endless breaking, endless forward motion through iron, flame, noise, and faith. I would not trade it for anything in the galaxy. We are mechs. We turn garbage into miracles. We make the impossible obey through the force of pure certainty. We are the hidden heart of every great waaagh, the hands behind every roaring engine, the reason battle wagons charge, stompas stride, guns thunder, and war bosses become legends. And as long as there are orcs, as long as there is war, as long as there is metal to hammer and enemies to crush, we will keep building. Hammer by hammer, bolt by bolt, machine by machine. Because red really does move faster. And that is not just belief. That is truth, hardened in the fire of 1,000 battles, proven by the triumph of 1,000,000 impossible machines, confirmed by the collective will of the fiercest warrior race in the galaxy. We are orcs, and our technology works because we believe in it so hard that reality itself does not dare argue back.